Hello! Okay, so this video is about my journey through the coding bootcamp General Assembly in New York City. So I'm going to be explaining everything from a standpoint that hopefully everybody can understand, so you won't necessarily need to be a coder. So if there's anything that you kind of need to know in order for me to, in order to keep up with what I'm talking about, then I'll explain that. I won't explain every single thing, but just enough, hopefully, so that you understand what I'm talking about. So General Assembly is a coding boot camp. Basically, what that means in my own context is that I I am going to them for an intensive course to learn how to code. The one that I'm specifically going for is the Web Development Immersive. Um, and they have several other programs that you can go for mobile development and the like. But I'm going for web development. So I just finished my first week there. And it was pretty intense. I'm also, as a testament to how intense it is, I'm not even sure. I can't take the time to edit this video, so I apologize if there's too many ums and buts in this video that I don't have time to cut out, because it is a whole process to go through and edit the video. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to try and be to do this in one take as much as possible. So forgive me for both the way that I look and also the rambling that I happen to do that I'm not able to cut out. So, but I just thought it would be helpful to some people and kind of a cool thing to do to just track what the whole process is like. So, in order to get into the program, there's a whole pre-process. There's a whole process that you have to go through in order to apply to the school. And I might get some of these things, some of the order of these things switched around, because I can't remember which one of these things came first, but this is generally the way it goes. So how I found out about this was that my sister recommended I check this thing out. I've been learning how to code on my own for about a year, and it was rough. Like, I was able to do it. There are tons of amazing resources online, but it's not a necessarily fun process for a beginner with no one guiding you. But anyway, so she recommended that I check this out, and I did. I went out to their website. I saw that you could apply. I clicked on it just because I was like, whatever. And the initial application process is not actually that intimidating, which is great. It really encouraged me to just fill it out. They asked a few quick questions. They were like, there was only like one or two spots where you had to, maybe write maybe like a paragraph or something like that. But it really wasn't. You didn't have to submit an entire essay. You didn't have to have tons of references for everything, and it was in my opinion a pretty easy initial application. So I sent it out. I was like, okay, sure, I'll fill this out. Did it, sent it out, and then I think it was like the next day, I got an email back, and they were like, hey, you applied. We would like to. I think it was set up a phone interview. I think that was the next step. And I was like, okay, yeah, we can do that. And I don't remember how long it was, but I had a phone interview. That went fine. And I found a little bit more through that person. They said that I had to, I think it was, both do a couple courses. I had to complete a couple courses to try and make sure I was up to a certain mini standard. and these courses were courses that General Assembly had. They weren't courses. They were just like little units that you had to get through, like one tiny lesson in like Code Academy, as part of a larger whole for their entire course through, I don't know what, like HTML or something. So it was just like, it was like the extent of like one of those lessons. Anyway, so there was like one or two of those that they said I had to do, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then they also told me that I had to create an About Me page, a single HTML, CSS page, and I was like, yeah, I can totally do that. Thankfully, I had some experience with that, but they specified that it didn't have to like be crazy amazing. It could be the simplest thing, just as long as you did it, so they could kind of like gauge your abilities in the context of the lessons that they directed you to, because some of that stuff you learned through that. Anyway, so I did those two things. Thankfully, it was really easy for me. And then I submitted it, and the person that I talked to over the phone was like, okay, great, that's awesome. Now, can you come in for a in-person interview? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. It happened to be on New Year's Eve. So that was interesting. But thankfully it was like midday, so didn't really conflict with anything. So I went in real quick. I was afraid I was going to get like trapped in the city because things were going to get crazy. I was able to like get out of there before it got too nuts. And it all went fine. The interview went totally cool. We were supposed to look at the About Me page that I created, and we just kind of like talked about a few things, went over some of the other requirements, and there were mainly two that stuck out to me. One was that they said that they required me to have a Mac, and that's probably not an issue for some people. The only context that it was an issue for me was that I didn't already have a Mac, and I did not have the money to get a Mac, because Macs are kind of expensive. That's not something that you can really debate, it's just a fact. This has nothing to do with whether or not you think Macs are better than Windows, or like other PCs, anything like that. It's just that they do have a higher financial threshold, and I did not already have one. So that concerned me a little bit. Because I don't have, just like $1,000 minimum dollars to just like throw out there. I considered getting a used one for cheaper, but I figured that some of the reasons that they wanted me to have a Mac may have to do with me being able to be marketed to another. Like I can bring that to whatever job it is that I get out of this program. I can be like, yeah, I have a Mac. I'm totally on the same page. Cool. So that was one thing, and I'll go a little bit more into detail about that. The second thing was that they told me that there was about 50 hours pre-work to do before the class even started, and that was like, okay, but I totally had time, and thankfully I was no longer working at Starbucks, and I had that free time to be able to accomplish that. So I was like, okay, that's not really a big deal either. So I thought it was kind of a cool process that they had me go through, because it felt completely appropriate. It didn't. When you go to university, one of the standard things for pretty much any application is writing this sort of essay, which isn't bad necessarily, but you'd think that there would be some sort of appropriate test, like if I was going for something that had to do with math, or something that was like an engineering deal, or if I was going for the arts, that they would have some kind of test to be like, hey, this person is serious. They are actually able to perform, some said task in this field. So there's no reason that you can't have both. You could totally have an essay, and you could have some sort of test in the field of study. But it was somewhat refreshing to me to have a process that directly had to do with the point of what I was going for. So there are so many differences between this program and everything that happens at General Assembly and something like a university. And I could probably make an entire video just about that, but I want to try and stick to specifically how the process is going for me in the moment. So just as a story, I'll probably come back and recap everything once this whole program is done. It is, I believe it's 12 weeks. It started on the 19th of January, and it is going until the 12th of April. I think that's right. So anyway, that's about how long the whole program is, this particular program. They have shorter ones. You can take single classes or like a week-long class, or I think, and just other things. Definitely check out General Assembly because I am in full support. So now for about the Macs and everything. So I was able to sort of get around that a little bit, which I am so happy about. For like a few just personal reasons. Again, like I'm totally open to learning how to use a Mac. I'm not 100% averse to them, but they told me that the only exception to having a Mac would be to have Linux installed on your laptop. And basically the only requirement was that it was able to connect to the internet. So I was like, you know what, I've never done anything with Linux. I hear that it's pretty cool. So I started looking into it for about a day, I think it was, and I got, one of my friends recommended a free course that I started to check out. I'm definitely not done with yet, but I was like, you know what, yeah, I can totally do this. So what I did was I wiped Windows off of my laptop, and I put Ubuntu on it, which is a Linux version. It's a version of Linux. So that actually wasn't really a very difficult process. I was expecting it to be some sort of really, really crazy, weird, and difficult thing, but it wound up being pretty easy. I mean, I suppose I already had the experience of building my tower computer, and some of the process behind doing that is similar, where you have to partition particular parts of the memory on a hard drive and stuff like that. But maybe that's the only similarity. Anyway, so I did that, and they were like, okay, cool, you are good to go. And I'm like, that's great. I had to go through a whole loan process, so I have that going, and that was probably more, I mean, personally, it was more stressful than the actual pre-work. But yeah, I got through the pre-work fine. I was like, okay, that's good. They had me sign some things to be like, hey, you're not gonna, like, just drop out. And there were, like, a few other things that you had to check off before signing and, reading everything. So there was all that, bunch of paperwork. And then I jumped right into the week. I'm just trying to make sure that I didn't miss anything super important. I don't think so. I mean, I could go into like because I'm commuting from Jersey, so there's details about that, but that's not really important. Anyway, so we get to the first day. First 2 days are almost completely foreign to me. first 2 or 3 days, I can't remember. And the reason is because the topics that they were dealing with basically did not directly have to do with coding. It had to do with coding related things, but we weren't sitting down being like, okay, we're going to code stuff. The first, there were mainly two things. For the first thing was going over how to use this thing called Git, GIT, which is a, maybe you've heard of GitHub, which is connected to that. They're connected. Git is basically a thing called a version control program. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's sort of like if I wrote a poem and I was like, hey, I want this to be the best poem ever, and I need your help. So I have, like, let's say I have 15 people, 15 friends, whatever, and I copy my poem and hand it out to all of them. Then they all make changes, but they're all different changes, and they're like, this is what I think is the best, and then they all say that, and then we have to go through and be like, well, you know, and discuss, everybody has to discuss it and be like, you know, which ones actually are the best. And then after doing that, you have your final copy. Now, it would be really, really chaotic and sort of a pain to have to go through. I mean, especially if it's a long poem. I mean, if you're thinking short poem, it's probably not that big of a deal. But if you have something really long, a lot of stuff, you have to go through and read each one to find the specific differences, because for all those different people, they could have been in completely different areas, and it's a lot to sift through. So what this program, Git, does is that it finds those differences for you. It skips over everything that matches the same stuff, like everything that's the same, and then it points out, hey, this line's different, that line's different, what do you want to do about this? Then you decide, and the other reason that this is so great is not just because it points to those differences, but also because it keeps the integrity of the original copy, everybody else's copies, and the new copy without destroying it. So it's different than something like maybe like a Google Docs. Like if you go through, which is great. Like I love Google Docs, and I've had so much fun with editing a Google Doc at the same time as somebody else, and I can like see where their like cursor is, and it's a lot of fun. It's very collaborative. But that changes the one, basically changes the one, unless there's something about Google Docs that I don't know about. It basically changes the one version. But with Git, it keeps all of those other versions and the original and the new. So it's really, really beneficial. It's a really great thing. It was kind of hard to get used to, though, because it was a lot of command line prompts, command line stuff, and that was the second thing that I was not very familiar with, which is, again, not directly having to do with coding. Related to coding, but it's not like programming in a language. So so that was the other half of it, and we had to go through learning how to navigate through folders and files, and how to install programs through that, and yeah, that was a whole another foreign process. I felt this duplicity with it, where it was like sometimes I felt like, oh, this is totally easy, this isn't very difficult at all, and then other times I was just like, oh, I don't want to do this because it's so foreign to me. Later on in the week, it became pretty natural and not very difficult at all, which is one of the huge benefits of doing something this submersive, because this is the way the class is set up. You get into, it's basically just one long big class. You don't go to this immersive and you switch from, okay, now we're going to go into the Git class, and now we're going to go into the command line class, and now we're going to go into the JavaScript class. And you don't switch teachers. They have the same set of teachers, and it's a group of teachers, which is great. It's not just one guy being like, "Hey, I'm going to say the same thing over to you over and over again until you get it." You hear it from multiple perspectives, and they kind of all help out. You're not really sure who is the TA and who is the teacher, because they all kind of help each other out, which is really cool. The other really cool thing about this is that everybody, it's the same people in every class, in every class. Like, so after 1 week of being in this program, everybody in the class has gotten so much more comfortable with each other. Like, there's already like people hanging out a little bit and just BSing about stuff, which is really great, because so many times in a university, maybe sometimes you would get that, but you probably wouldn't be until like 2 weeks in. Maybe you might see 1 or 2 people being like forming a clique, or like being like, hey, you're cool, we have the same interests, we get along, or whatever. And the reason is that because you only see them for maybe 2 hours twice a week, and then the rest of the time you don't see them, unless you just happen to randomly be in another class with them, and even then it's still not them 9 to 5 every weekday that you get in this. They also make sure that you're in this, you're using this thing called Slack, which is like a messaging system for everybody that's in the class. So you join a group and you are able to communicate and share, your notes or comments or questions in that, even when you're not in class. So, like, we've been talking on Slack during the weekends. I say weekends. It's only been 1 weekend. So that's another really cool thing about this. After those first couple of days where we went through Git and the command line stuff that I was not familiar with at all, we started to get into core coding concepts from the perspective of JavaScript. So a lot of core coding concepts are very similar to each other. If you switch from one coding language to another, most of the things are going to be really similar. There might be 1 or 2 very small differences, but because you're already familiar with the previous one, you're like, oh, okay, so just instead of putting the period over here, I mean, it's not a period, but for like making a grammar analogy, instead of putting the period over here, we put it here instead, or instead of putting the accent mark or the comma here, we put it over there. Or, oh, we don't actually even use commas in this language. So, but the idea, a lot of the ideas are the same, and so the first class after those other 2, Git and command line, had to do with core concepts like strings, specifying the differences between strings and integers and floats and booleans and that kind of stuff. And then after that, we started to get a little deeper into the JavaScript. So we went over functions and all sorts of things. And they have us do homework too. Like, one of the things that they shared with me before the class even started was that each week is going to be about 20 hours of homework, which is pretty intense. I mean, if you say, okay, 5 hours after class on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's until about 10. And then we were supposed to have a half day on Friday, but instead they moved it to Wednesday, which kind of sucks a little bit. But in the end, it'll be a little bit better because it's in the middle of the week. We'll be more likely to just stick around and be like, okay, well, I don't have a party or anything that I'm going to go to. I mean, like, it wouldn't be true for me anyway. But instead, I'm just going to stick around and get to know other people, code, whatever. So basically, I don't have a half day at any point. Wednesday will be easier and feel nicer, but I'm still gonna wind up coding things and going to the city and talking to people. So that is basically the first week. I already feel the immersive getting to me. I am getting more used to typing faster instead of sitting there being like, oh man, what am I doing? What was that function? How do I write that? I'm just like, okay, function, and that's what it sounds like when you write a function. In case you didn't know, I just type it, and I know I'll get at least twice as fast as I am now, even though I'm faster than I was before. So it's just gonna make everything so much nicer, and so it's cool. It's really cool. So, in the next video, I will share the sort of things that we go over in that week, and probably just share intermittently a few things that I really appreciate that I'm seeing in General Assembly, that I have in my mind now, but am not going to share because this video is already pretty long. So yeah, if you have any questions about General Assembly that I can answer, definitely ask. Let me know if you have any quick ones that I'll answer probably in the comments. Anything big, I'll probably just wait until the next video. But yeah, so I have to get to do the homework that they assigned over the weekend, so I should really go. That's definitely what I had to do. So, until next time.